What's up YouTube, and welcome to my pickups video for the month of June 2026. This was a very heavy travel month for Illinois for some reason. I started off the month very early with going to the Illinois Game Con in Bloomington-Normal Illinois. I think it was my fifth or sixth time in a year in a row of going to it. I think it's a really good con. It's not one of the bigger ones in the whole United States, but it is very healthy and it continues to grow year over year. And it really brings a good audience of people in from my native St. Louis, from Chicago, from Indianapolis, Iowa, Wisconsin, you name it. So it kind of just has a good strategic location, even though the city itself is not all that big that hosts the con. But did get a couple things there I'll show you, and then I made one other large purchase at the end of the month locally. And then also did a work trip to Chicago. Didn't buy anything game-wise in Chicago, but did hit up a new game store that opened there. I believe I've seen the vendor at cons before. They actually had some really nice inventory, but the prices just felt like full con and beyond. And so for availability, it was really good, but ultimately just nothing I needed to absolutely purchase during my trip there. So didn't get anything from Chicago, but was there for a few days in the middle of the month as well. So let's go ahead and start talking about the few things that I did get. Like I said, there really wasn't a ton of things I got, but there were a couple big purchases made this month. So first thing I got was from the con. This was not my major purchase, but this is Operation Wolf for the Sega Master System. And if you're looking at this box art and saying, that doesn't look that familiar or something that I see in game stores that often, it's because this was a Euro exclusive for the Master System. So for us in the United States and Canada, probably not something you've seen too often. The main reason I wanted this one, number one, I'm a big Taito fan. Number two, I thought the artwork was cool. And number three, this is one of the games that does support the Sega Light Phaser light gun, and I wanted to check out how it compared to the NES version of the game that uses the Zapper. Ultimately, I think this is a much better version of the game than what we got on the NES, which was a pretty big seller in the US. Game has just some nice graphics to it that kind of reflected the era. I think this one came out after the NES version and a couple years after the arcade. It does work well with the phaser light gun, however it does have one of the limitations of the light gun, which is that it only has the trigger. There's no other buttons on the light gun. So to be able to play the game properly, you actually have to hook up a controller into one of the controller ports and use that every time you want to throw a grenade. So you have to be shooting, but then also whenever you want to use your auxiliary weapon, you have to switch to the control pad and push the button. So it's playable, it obviously works, but not necessarily the smoothest thing, with just the way that all is a little bit clunky. The game also will work just fully with the Sega control pad, but I didn't try that version because I'm sure the accuracy is nowhere near as good as with the light gun and a CRT TV, which I had for my setup. So really nice to have this. The story with this one was I did get it at the con, and there was a vendor there that was there last year also that had just these huge tubs full of European exclusive Master System titles. I bought a couple from them last year, I believe, and then this year it just felt like the selection was way more picked over, so I think, just some of the people have really cherry-picked the interesting stuff. There was a lot of, movie licensed games and cartoons and characters and things like that got Euro Master System releases, but nothing I really had to have. So this was the one that caught my eye, just being a Taito release, and I do like the Light Phaser games, so was kind of doing some research, seeing how many Light Phaser games there are. It actually does seem like it could be an attainable subset goal, just to go ahead and complete the rest of those. Pretty much have all the US releases. I actually have a couple of the other Euro exclusives, and then I think there's at least maybe one or two more that I would have to track down from the European release. So kind of fun collecting some of these Master System games that were Euro exclusive. The system obviously was much more popular there than it was in the US, and had a much longer lifespan. So you got a lot of later releases that we never got here that had a chance here that probably would have sold otherwise. So neat to have this, and had a fun time playing it. So I did get one thing locally. This was actually just this last weekend. It was one of my local game stores that has a big trade-in from a huge collector of Japanese Saturn, PS1, and PS2, and Dreamcast games that traded in their collection a little over a year ago, I would say, maybe even longer. And I don't get to this store super often, but when I do, I just kind of pick through that again. They priced it all whenever it first came in, and ultimately, prices have gone up since then. So some of the things that weren't necessarily a great deal whenever they first priced it now are starting to look like a better deal, because you can't beat the prices, at least online. And not too common, you're going to see some of this Japanese release stuff in other stores. So that being said, I went through the Saturn games again that they had from the collection, and there was one that I had seen in the collection before that I wanted. The price wasn't appealing before. I did some research and I realized, like, holy cow, this game's gone up like $200 since the last time I looked at it. So didn't look like I was going to get a deal on it online anywhere, and I decided to go ahead and pull the trigger and grab it from the store, and that is Super Tempo for the Japanese Saturn. This is part of a trilogy of Tempo games that came out on unusual Sega systems. And so the very first game was a 32X only release. We did get it in the US. There's a Japanese version of it and European version of that one. We got Tempo Junior on the Sega Game Gear, and I just recently got a complete copy of that I think I might have shown in just my last video. Which was decent, but just weird that it was a handheld release and still not like a proper Genesis type of release or anything like that. And then we got this one we didn't get in the US. This was a Japanese exclusive, and it is by far the pinnacle of the series. What's interesting about the Tempo series, they were developed by the company Red, who is much better known for being the creators of Bonk, as well as Sakura Taisen. And it has some of the weirdness of the Bonk series as far as the platforming and some of the creativity of the characters. And ultimately just a very colorful game. I really like the style of this game. I don't know if this would have sold in the US being a 2D platformer. And then I think the main thing that doomed it from ever coming here is this was a 1998 release even in Japan, and the Saturn was essentially dead in 98 here. So not really a chance that we would have gotten this one. I don't know if it would have sold well over here, but I can tell for true 2D platforming aficionados, there's a lot to like about this game. It does have some Japanese in between stages, so I don't really know what's going on with the story, but as far as like the gameplay, it's totally fine. You don't need to know Japanese. And then what I think is really cool about this one in particular is the variety of what's going on in the game. There is just some like straightforward platforming in the first couple stages just to get your feet wet. Then it gets into like some puzzle solving stages, which are a little bit more complex. The boss battles are very interesting. There is a heavy focus on the music in the game because it is a music-themed character. And so you pick up instruments, and then there's things like you pick up extra characters, and then it changes some of the background music just every time you add a different non-playable character to your party and things like that. So they did some interesting things with the sound in this game. And then ultimately you get to a stage that has a shooting stage that is very creative. So it's 2D horizontal shooting. Feels like it was probably inspired by Super Air Zonk and the Air Zonk side story games from Bonk. And so those are really fun. And then there's just some more just creative stuff that goes on in the game. So very fun. It was kind of intended, I guess, for a younger audience in some senses, in that it's pretty forgiving as far as like the difficulty curve. But it does have some like weird little adult touches as far as the humor in the game. It does have an in-game arcade that you can use your credits from picking up just items throughout the stage to use in exchange for gameplay, and they're basically micro games. There's one that I thought was really funny. It was like you're basically trying to scarf slices of pizza from a pizza on a table while your mom is eyeing you and trying to keep you from doing it, and so you have to like grab a slice whenever she looks away, but it's really a rhythm action game and how it plays. And I thought it was kind of funny that and a couple of the other mini games in the game just felt very precursor to the Rhythm Heaven series that Nintendo put out. So I don't know if they were fans of this game and they played some of this, but very similar. If you're a fan of that series, you would like some of the mini games in the arcade in this. But yeah, very happy to have this in the collection. It's a game that I knew I wanted, just it's very difficult to find, but it was one that I just genuinely like, the Tempo series, and really nice to have this to complete the set of those. So that was my big local purchase that I made. I have one more thing I got, though. This was my other big con find, and I like really hem-hawed at the event on, is this what I want to spend my money on, or do I want to buy like several smaller things? Because there were other things that definitely caught my eye. And I had a friend with me there, and we talked about it, and he had gotten several things, and he just kind of like pushed me over the edge. It's just like, look, you're not going to find another one of those. Just go ahead and grab it. So what I did was there was a vendor that had some really great stuff. I've actually talked to him before. I bought things from him before. I think he's based in the Chicago area, and really had some great selection of his booth in general. But one thing that really caught my eye was he had a boxed copy of Aero Fighters for the Super Nintendo. And this is basically one of the big grails of the Super Nintendo set. So the deal with this was, it wasn't complete. It was the box and it was the cartridge. The box is in good condition. It's got some scuffs here and there. It's definitely not mint or anything like that. But I know that this box is incredibly hard to find. And at home, I already had a mint condition cartridge. And I still don't have the manual or the map that this originally came with. So again, it's still not complete. But I asked the vendor if he would be willing to sell me just the box, knowing I didn't need to buy the cartridge again, and I didn't really want to sell off such an expensive item just to have the box. And he was willing to break them up, so it worked out really great. He was able to pull the cartridge out, sell that, reprice it, sell it separately, which probably will be easier to sell. And then I got the box for a very, very difficult game to find for the Super Nintendo. So if you're unfamiliar with this one, this game is interesting for a few reasons. So this is a 2D shooter, it's vertical, and it is from the Sonic Wings series in the arcade. So it's the first game in the Sonic Wings series that was also sold as Aero Fighters in US arcades, I believe. And then it also was published by a company called Mick O'River, which did some publishing for arcade titles as well in the US. And I think that's probably why they ended up being the publisher of this. They only released one other game on the Super Nintendo, and it was a much more common game, but it's just a volleyball release. And so very strange that, like, this existed from a publisher that didn't really do much on the Super Nintendo. And it was a 94 release, so it wasn't like it was a super late release or super early release or anything like that, but for some reason just they micro-printed this game. I don't think that too many copies of this existed even back in the day. I certainly never saw it. And it really is good. Like, if you think about all the shooters on the system, a lot of them have performance issues with slowdown and things like that. This game actually translated pretty well to the Super Nintendo. So I've enjoyed playing this on the Super Nintendo, even though I have some of the other versions of the Sonic Wings series, and you can even get compilations that have all the titles now. But very happy to have this in the collection just to get me a little bit closer to having this game complete. So I don't know if I'll ever be able to find the manual separately, and I definitely know finding the map separately is going to be a massive challenge. But I can tell you from years of going to cons, it's very rare that even a cartridge only of this game appears, even in cases of vendors that have multiple copies of some of the things that you would think are traditionally rare. So that's really what pushed me over the edge to go ahead and grab it. I knew I probably wouldn't see another one for a very long time, or at least somebody that was willing to break apart the box and sell it, and ultimately decided to make this my big purchase of the month. So very happy to get this. I'll put my cartridge in with this and make my Super Nintendo shelf look a little bit more appealing. So pretty cool to have that, and just a neat little story, I guess, that kind of went with that. So hopefully you enjoyed. Like I said, not a ton of different items to show, but some pretty interesting stuff, at least as far as I'm concerned. And hopefully you enjoyed. Please take a moment, like, comment, subscribe, let me know what you think. And I will talk to you soon. Have a great day or night, wherever you are.